tonight?
Very good.
Well, good. Thumbs up. Let me
Glad
look at
to
the
see you.
faces that I can see. Wave if I can see you. I love that. That makes me feel great. I really love that. Okay, don't forget this evening to. It's like I see a new face every time I look up, and then I'm like, oh, yeah, I see you. I see you. I see you. Yeah, this is good. Don't forget to use the chat room tonight and write in any questions or comments or any kind of synchronicities that have happened based on the content that we brought through over the last 2 months. Okay. Someone is online that knows that they sent me a long email, and I have read it and absorbed it and appreciated it. I just simply did not yet have time to respond. So you are not neglected or overlooked. So thank you for putting the energy into it. And I will respond. So I want you to know that I really did appreciate it. So good. And I know I'm heard. So welcome back to part 3 of the series of going into the answers further and taking a look at the group of guides that had originally given me the answers and guest written the answers and were the primary authors of the answers, but also I think one of the primary opportunities that we have with these 3 classes is to understand how they're with us now and how they're guiding us now. And that's the beauty of this process, is that it's not finite and that the information is endless and that it's very, very responsive to changing patterns and changing movement. And what I am aware of, even from outside of the class, and I'm sure all of you are, is that right now life is changing like weekly. So even if we were to have had suppositions about what we would be doing in the end of August, in March, or in mid-April, or mid-May, or the beginning of June, there's no way our suppositions could have been accurate because things are changing that fast. And that's what deconstruction is all about. When you're pulling things apart, you don't really know how long it's going to take for things to come apart or to be separated from wherever they were previously. So the deconstruction period is going to be ongoing, not just for this year, but beyond this year. It doesn't mean that we can't begin rebuilding as things are still being deconstructed, but it does mean that our ability to predict how life will be on the planet, on the globe, in our neighborhoods, in our communities, it's less able to be accurate for longer periods of time while this is happening. Think of it a little bit like, what was the analogy I used last night that the guides gave, is it's as though it's the aftermath of a tsunami. So I've always pictured this as a big wave, right? And us with higher levels of awareness, we're riding the top of the wave on our happy surfboards. And yes, we understand what's going on underneath, but we're able, because we have allowed ourselves to grow and to expand into the energy of knowing how to ride the wave. It's not a gift. It hasn't been handed to us. We've earned this. We've earned our levels of awareness. And so we can ride the wave. But the aftermath of a tsunami is that everything is flattened, correct? Which is exactly the same as deconstruction. But what we want to even look at a little bit more, which came through last night at a class I was giving, the thing that causes a tsunami is the shifts in the plates underneath the earth, underneath the ocean floor. So even though there are an enormous number of weather happenings that can change the landscape for any given region, temporarily or permanently, going from a windstorm to a fire to some hail to an earthquake and all that, the thing that is the biggest is when the plates shift, right? That's a big bit of movement. So a tsunami it's preceded by moving plates in the earth. So this is a thorough shake. This is a thorough shake. And if you think about a land-based earthquake, what does wind up happening is there's the initial impact where you can see what has changed or altered when the earthquake hit. But then there are aftershocks. And in the aftershocks, sometimes things that are not that stable, they start to deteriorate or fall down or crack. So even though this period in history is exactly like that, it doesn't happen in one day. It happens over time. The opportunity for us to not have a deconstruction period of the magnitude that we're having and will have, the opportunity to not have that or to avoid that, humankind ignored the opportunities to not have that happen. So we're co-creating this opportunity by ignoring other times that we could have welcomed, removing things that weren't soulfully moving us forward and rebuilding something soulfully connected afterward. But that's okay, because now it's inevitable that more will come apart. That's not soulful. And it's inevitable that people who are living more soulfully can rebuild by choice, not by accident. So in this vein, it's kind of comforting to know that souls who had the ability to bring forth the information and the answers, which I think we can all say still to this day is profound, and it is timeless. It might have a few earthly references of people that we might not remember in 100 years, but it's timeless in its content, and it can be picked up again in 100 years, and the truth will still exist within there. And if those souls that allowed me to receive that information are the ones that we're connecting with in these classes, then I don't know about you, but I feel confident that they're going to be a phenomenal group of energies to guide us through an unprecedented period in human history. Okay? And that's exactly what it is that we have, is an unprecedented period in human history. It doesn't mean that there haven't been other tsunamis or plagues or globally unifying events potentially throughout history, but this is the first time that there has been a common theme that has been able to touch every single person on the planet with uncertainty, because there were no guarantees of any direction that it would go one way or the other, but that we also had the advances of instantaneous communication and very immediate travel, so that the unification could be instantaneous. So even back in 1918 with the Spanish flu, even though that epidemic was far more deadly, it was more slow moving as far as its effect on humanity, because there were very, very few ways for us to adequately communicate with different aspects of how people lived and where they lived and how we got information from one place to another. So this is the one, this is the first in history where unless you are completely offline and without electricity, and there still are communities like that, unless you're completely offline or you're living in a country where the government, it prevents you from having access to free information, then you are involved. And the percentage of those who are not involved in some sort of knowingness is as minuscule as it could ever be with any globally unifying event or experience. So first of all, again, let me get a glimpse at everybody, and raise your hand if you did feel any experience since the last time we were together that was notable about some of the cast of characters that have been coming in. Did anybody feel? Okay, so we'll go to Bloom Peace. Can you unmute and chat with us?
Yes.
Yeah,
I
there we
can.
go.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi. Thank you.
You're glowing.
Oh, thank you. So I think for me, it's been Seth, I think, that has come through so much. And even today, when we had talked earlier, and we talked about a song that that was coming through to me called He Ain't Heavy, He's My Brother.
Right.
And I don't know, it's just such a beautiful sign that the guides are with us and that everyone that we've been talking about is with us, because right after we talked, right after I had texted that one song, I went for a run, and I usually listen to like more of a punk rock station when I run for fast music. And
I listen to Josh Groban, so that's why you look like you do, and I look like I do.
So literally right after I mentioned that, I had this thought, like, let's look at, then my second go is 70s music. And instead 60s music. And instead I was directed to 70s music. And the first song that came on was He Ain't Heavy, He's My Brother. And I just knew.
That blew me away this morning.
It blew me away. It was just like
Not
another.
like it's a common song. Yeah.
It's not. I haven't heard it in years. And I don't know, I immediately looked at all the lyrics. And then one of the lyrics was about being unencumbered. Being encumbered. And it's something that you say all the time, how we should all be unencumbered. And,
right.
And I thought Seth is, because I'm reading the Seth material. And you mentioned Seth last time, and you mentioned the Seth material, and I happen to have the book right next to me. I don't know. I just felt like he's with us. They're constantly sending us signs, and I just feel super connected,
Yeah. I totally like that. And I did get to hear the story today, and I was blown away. It's still like, all of us online right now, we celebrate these miracles. We never lose our awe of them, and they're miraculous every time. And if we ever lose that, like, oh my God, I can't believe what happened, pulling someone else in the room, then, what the heck are we doing here? Because they are magnificent, and they are ways that we know that the things that we're pulling through that are not connected to these signs, at least it helps give us ongoing confidence that the information that we're receiving can be trusted. It's a way for guides to perpetually and continually validate our experiences. So let me glance again. Anybody else had a moment to think of a moment when, all right, Seetha, can you unmute? Oh, you are unmuted. Okay, thanks.
I think I mentioned this to you, Karen. So I had no idea that Ayn Rand, prior to these sessions, was an influencer, the primary author. And I was going through my Myers-Briggs certification while I was going through this as well. And found my Myers-Briggs type as an INTJ. And so I just, out of curiosity, I Googled INTJs, in history.
Huh.
And Ayn Rand is the first name that came up.
Wow.
Wow. It was just fascinating and interesting. And, as I think about it, what's also interesting is the foundation that sort of, worked on her work over time. I actually had bought her book, Atlas Shrugged, when I was in college, and there was a scholarship that was based off of that book.
No way.
That I was going to compete for. Yeah. And I never actually ended up reading the book or going for the scholarship, but I had that book on my desk for I don't know how many years. And it feels like it's coming full circle. Like she's coming back to me and telling me that I needed to either read the book or, at least follow this now.
Wow. That's such an interesting story. And how I did find that you were like, I wonder if I'm going to be able to take this class while I'm going for that training at the same time. And obviously not only could you do it, but the parallel and the sync was meaningful and purposeful, and helped you to see how synchronized Ein's presence in your life really is. I will say that if people wanted more insights into Ein's philosophies and the body of work that she left, Atlas Shrugged it's a big book, right? You know, you had it sitting around for, you said, months or years or whatever. You could have used it as the foundation for building a brand new house because it's that heavy, and you could have, you know, built a house on top of it. But if you were to just kind of go through a website or two and get the cliff notes on it, the gist of it is fascinating if you have a decent synthesis, because it does give some insight into some of the philosophy of ideas that we're actually even going to be discussing tonight. And I remember when I did probably mention to you guys that I went on quite a long scavenger hunt that she had sent me on. She had sent me on a scavenger hunt to, quote unquote, get a piece of information that she told me would help me publish the book, right? In fact, there was nothing like that at the end of the scavenger hunt, but because I thought that there was a goal that would help me, I engaged in the scavenger hunt. And that's what got her to say, all right, now do this, now do this, now do that. And at the end of the scavenger hunt, what was at the end of it was unrefutable evidence that it was her that was communicating with me. And so at that moment, I realized there's nothing about publishing this book here. She just had to find a very, very clever way to get me to, beyond a shadow of a doubt, be able to identify her in ways that were meaningful and, like I said, irrefutable for me to go forward with confidence. And the reason I'm saying the story is because her body of work as a human in that last incarnation, it's not very loving, and it's not very compassionate, and it's lacking so many of the elements that we would consider to be the demonstration of a person who's more enlightened. And so it's almost, in some regards, it's almost the antithesis of the body of work that I'm leaving behind. So even though she had given me lots of ways to identify her and to feel validated that I was communicating with her, she could sense in my thoughts that I thought that there was something is not right here, because clearly she and I might have been friends when I was feeling my rebellion in me in my 20s or whatever. We might have been friends. Well, she might not have been friends with me, but I probably would have hovered on every word somewhere in a dark corner listening to her. But, you know, I wouldn't have felt warmed by her. I wouldn't have felt invited into an embracing circle. I wouldn't have felt inspired. I probably would have felt a little bit beaten, because her information kind of left you feel helpless instead of empowered. So that big scavenger hunt that she put me on to give this indication of her true identity, and now where we are in 2020, which is such a magnificent year in the course of history, to see the elements of her philosophy that are really resonating today that we'll continue to talk about. It's fascinating when you put an enlightened spin on it, and when you see how that book, she was really ahead of her time. And, you know, in the time when she wrote that book, I'm sorry, but the world was not warm and fluffy and touchy-feely and squeezy. We were barely even scratching the surface of modern psychology, let alone understanding the influences of our own childhoods and how they affected us as adults. We were not making hot cocoa for people when somebody, you know, beat them up on the playground. We just weren't even doing that yet. So even though her books are like, ooh, 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 every time you feel like you got over the punch in your head, she punches you again. But you can see, as we look at it tonight, that the magnificent thing is that within the context of that period of history, and with her own Russian background, which was even less demonstrative than perhaps the American equivalent of that period, the philosophy was channeled. That, you know, was channeled, because it is timeless. You can pick up the basics of that philosophy in 200 years or 200 years ago or 2,000 years ago, and the concepts are relevant. And what I have an increasing sense of with our guides over the last 2 weeks is that this is the philosophy that when we merge it and infuse it into the aspects of what enlightenment looks like and feels like, and how to live within it, and how to process it, how to experience it, and how to share it, when you infuse it with the body of information that she actually did channel through Fountainhead and the Anthem and We the People and Atlas Shrugged, you can see that in her period, from her background, from her childhood, and in world history where it was then, it's clear that she was connecting and not knowing that she was connecting. Okay, and here's another interesting little fact that helped me during the channeling period, when I was like, Ayn Rand, come on. First of all, I can't go out and tell any human being I'm channeling Ayn Rand and I'm getting all this beautiful Care Bears stuff, right? It's like, really? Let's talk about that, Karen. You're so sweet, but you're clearly not channeling her. And so I had to get over that doubt and find more and more evidence. But one of the interesting facts I came across was that after she wrote this, massive tome, it was unnamed. And she was in a state of fret or frenzy because she had publishing deadlines and she had no title for the book. And at some point, her husband, who they had an interesting relationship, he just channeled the answers. And one day he just walked in the room one day and he said, Atlas Shrugged. And it's interesting because there's not one thing in the book that refers to Atlas. There's not one thing in the book about putting the weight of the world down. So it's not in synchronicity with her philosophy, with the human being that she was, nor does it make a hard connection between the theme in the book and the title. But Atlas Shrugged makes more sense as a title today, especially if you put an enlightened spin on it by fusing her philosophy into the process of enlightenment, because no one person can hold the weight of the world on their shoulders. And that is one of the beautiful things about why I love the beauty and the parallel of communicating with them 15 years ago, having Ayn Rand be the primary author, and even the theme of no one person can hold the weight of the world on their shoulders. Okay? So it's fascinating to see how all of this comes together. When you put the pieces together, it's even from a non-scholarly position, it's actually fascinating to see that it just makes a lot of sense. It just makes a lot of sense. I'm going to just read what you wrote. It's a little bit on the long side, Siva. So I'm going to read it out loud for people who view it tomorrow. We have a lot of people that can't attend, and they will be watching the video. Forgot to mention that after having Atlas Shrugged on my desk forever, thinking I was going to compete for a scholarship that was based on it, I was sent to the former Soviet Union with the Peace Corps, learned Russian, and ended up understanding her background much better. Are you kidding me? Oh my, I can't, really? Wow.
Yeah. It's almost like she sent me there.
See, like this to me, like, where were you during my scavenger hunt? I could have used a boost, thank you very much, because that's the kind of miracles that would have given me the confidence to continue when I thought things got too hard. Where were you? Where were you hiding in 2005? You can make it up to me now. That's miraculous. And I love the irony of going to the former Soviet Union with the Peace Corps. That sentence melds everything that I just said, infusing her philosophy with enlightenment and warms and fuzzies and cozies. It brings it all together. Oh my God, that's amazing. Absolutely amazing. Wow. This is how I was when Gay told me the story about the song earlier, but I didn't get to share that because I had that earlier today. But this is life, right? This is real life. Whatever everyone is doing that's still ignorant and unaware, that's not real life. That's all made up. This is real. That is very, 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 very exciting. Wow, that's very exciting. Thank you. I'm glad you shared. Okay, so that makes so much sense. Now, interestingly, as you can probably hear maybe in my tone, even though it made no sense to me that Ayn Rand and the soul of Ayn Rand would be channeling a more loving view of our earthly reality, it didn't make any sense from a metaphysical perspective. And I knew that if anybody was an Ayn Rand buff, or they were, working for her foundation, or they were promoting her philosophies, or so on, or, holding objectivism conferences, I knew that I would not be welcome into their world because it's too outlandish, this seeming connection between the two. But what you can hear probably is I actually really do respect her body of work for the time and for its originality. Okay. She didn't regurgitate other people's stances. She didn't even try to debate different aspects of political systems that were in existence. She went in there with soul, maybe not heart, but she went in there with soul, and she, I got Gina to laugh. She went in there with soul, and she gave us a brand new, perhaps wise way, not necessarily enlightened, but a very wise way to perhaps perceive reality and maybe prevent the devastation that would come from mediocrity. Okay. So, wow, that was just so amazing. Oh, there's another thing here. Ayn Rand was an answer on Jeopardy a week or two ago. I don't recall the question. That's amazing. Wow. And you thought of her before they revealed the answer, and you don't usually know any of the answers. That's classic. Yeah, she's definitely omnipresent. And, you guys are all probably like, well, you know what? Can we just talk to JFK Jr. again? Because that was kind of cool. And all you're doing is bringing Ayn in, and that's not quite as cool. But you know what? That's who's here. I remember someone, I think she's also probably on the call, but someone sent me a video of Ayn during an interview, and it was the first time I had never seen myself that when I channel, my eyes go back and forth rapidly. I never saw it, but a lot of people have told me that's not something you could see in yourself. But I've been told over and over again that my eyes do this. And then I saw it on her in that interview, which is why someone sent me the bit. And sure enough, her eyes were going boop, 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 boop. And to me, how weird is that as just another way of knowing that I was channeling her and she was channeling whatever sources in her body of work. Who does it? Who goes on an interview and just their eyes go back? I can't even force my eyes to do it, but who does that, right? You've seen tons of people. They have eye contact. They lean forward to the interviewer, but not her. She looks up in space and she goes, blah, 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 right? So cool stuff. And after tonight's class, don't stop. Stay with this. Keep staying with this, because whether it's Alexander Hamilton or Benjamin Franklin, or it's Montgomery Ward, or it's JFK Jr., or it's Ayn, or it's Seth, or it's any of these players, Thomas Edison, Alexander Graham Bell, anyone that we've brought through so far, Elizabeth Glaser, anyone that we've seen already and beyond, they're with you. They're with you. They're not distinct from you. They're not better than you. They're here with you because they recognize that we are drawn to each other through myriad, miraculous, specific energies that allow the sum of the parts to exceed that of the pieces. So I'm not saying that we're going to build a mountain together, but our shared experiences will tenfold or hundredfold enhance one another's experiences as we become increasingly able to knowingly help with the construction period. We might not have the tools and resources to do it now, but part of us meeting each other and knowing each other is to be able to increasingly influence the construction process that we'll be going through. Okay. I just remembered this. I just wanted to, I realize I've been getting emails from people that they don't really understand the relationship class. And I just want to explain it really quickly because it starts in a couple of weeks. Everyone that's on the relationship class, we will all have class on this 6 days from 7 to 8 p.m. And then you will choose your topic of particular interest, where we will show in discussion groups and homework the implementation of the material from these 6 classes. So you will pick the one that's interesting to you, or 2 or 3, and those groups meet after the relationship first class on 2 different nights, okay? So you'll stay on, if you picked romance, you'll stay on 2 evenings for an extra hour plus, and so on. I'm gonna look at everybody, just nod if you understand that. Everybody understands that? Okay, cool. And the reason the guides actually put this through, I actually have the notes. If you want to see what channeled notes look like, they're ridiculous. But I have the notes from when I channeled that. The reason is it's not for me to just be a talking head and channel at you guys. It's for us to grow and explore and examine together. As you have witnessed just in the first few minutes of tonight, you can see that there's great value in our sharing. My takeaways for tonight are greater because of your stories. And I'm sure that each of you have a greater takeaway from tonight and a more well-rounded and in-depth understanding because we are sharing. So the discussion groups are a critical part of this. We're going to have homework assignments in your selected area. We'll have partnership assignments as well. And when we come together on those dates, we're going to see how these topics actually work in real life. So it's not about just me delivering a channeled body of work to you. It's us figuring out how to make it work in our lives and to start that process of moving it from here into here. Okay. Oh, I like that. Jeannie wrote, what I have always loved about Ayn is that whenever you ask her a question, she does not sugarcoat the answer. Wow, she is, if you look up the word direct in the dictionary, there is a big fat picture of Ayn Rand right next to the word direct, but you are so right. Yeah, you are so right, Jeannie. I respect that. I really do. Again, not a cup of hot cocoa with some cute little mini marshmallows in it, but it gets the job done. She gets the job done. And when she does answer questions, you can almost see how her brain is working far more quickly than mine. Too funny. Okay, for me personally, the soul that's been around the most really is Seth. Ayn has kind of, weaseled her way back into my life in a big way. But Seth is definitely omnipresent. And Seth, as I was mentioning last time, we have a way of, we just have a really good way of communicating with each other. So guides are clever enough to not compel us to receive information the way they want us to receive it, even if it might have more exactitude. But what they do is they have a wonderful sense of what works for us as individuals. So, for example, I know exactly where I'm going to go. All right, where'd she go? Okay, at Tamia, you just don't have to talk, but just listen for a second, okay? Oh, this is so interesting. I didn't expect to do this, but that's fascinating. I thought I was going somewhere else, but I'm not going there. So let's go where we're going. All right, first of all, for those of you who are unaware, every soul, living or dead, has a higher self. So what I've gotten past is thinking that I can only communicate with those who are no longer in their bodies. I'm quite aware I can communicate with souls who are alive too. Not a lot of people will do that because it feels, it makes people feel a little more insecure, because even if we have a narrative of our eternal nature of the soul, we don't have a collective narrative on the planet yet that that we have higher selves and that we're just a piece of ourselves. So I really don't do it in public, talking to souls who are alive, but I will do it privately, and I will do it with enlightened individuals, because I understand that they can wrap their head around the concept. Okay, just like Mary Ellen and I are probably like on a cloud right now, chatting it up and having a good conversation. You know, we can be having a pretty cool conversation with someone's higher self who's still present. So Tammy, that long explanation is who came in is a soul who's alive, with a message for you. It's just so weird how it all came in, but it happens to be Helen Reddy. Please don't share this outside of that class, because people will really think that's freaking weird. But Helen Reddy came in, and what her message is that some of the souls I'm talking about, like Ein and Seth and Alexander Graham Bell and Thomas Edison, they do have that quickness of communicating, which Jeannie was referring to as Ein had in her physical life. But what Helen is saying to you is that she acts as a translator sometimes, because her softer approach in communicating with you helps you to bring in information more readily than someone with a stronger, bolder way of synthesizing info would appeal to you. And the point that she's illustrating at this moment is simply that guides are brilliant. They understand, if it's George Harrison at this exact second that's communicating with Diana, and Diana, a bunch of guys are like, Diana's not getting it. They'll be like, George, get the heck out of here, would you? And they'll put like, Mr. Rogers, you come in, talk to Diana or whomever. Do you follow what I'm saying? Like, they know more than we do about the vibration of how we, as human beings, process information. All right. One thing I find really fascinating is how often I get information about the brain, and doing sessions with people. It's very exciting when the guides tell me how the person I'm sitting with processes information differently than other people, but they never could have known that, because their only frame of reference is their own processing of information, right? We make an assumption, 2 eyes see, two ears hear. But when I'm with some people, I get this other stuff going on in the brain. And when I can describe it to the human, there's so many things that just start to line up and get into sync, because now they understand that they are different than everybody else, but we're always told that they were the same as everybody else. Like we're all told, correct? Right? You have a body, you should process the same. So just wanted to share that with you, that as you move forward, don't judge what it is you believe you are connecting with. Judgment will shut you down, but allowing will open it up and will allow it to flow freely. And my view is that if at the moment of our death, if we realize we made a mistake along the way and we weren't actually talking to Helen Reddy, but it was Howdy Doody, so what? Did you have fun thinking you were talking to Helen Reddy? So what? No loss. And I'm sure it was good stuff, because no matter whom you were connecting with, it's better than what we're getting on the earth, right? So don't get hung up. Just don't get hung up. Move forward from this day forward with the assumption that you are being guided in ways that the guides understand are exactly, specifically wonderful for you in this human form today. Okay? All right. So let's get back to where we were. So Seth is, again, he's very omnipresent for me. He's, I find him fascinating and all, but he's also, I can't exactly say the mind or the brain, because we don't really have like a brain when we're not alive per se, but he goes so quick that my desk is a disaster. So I look like I look like some kind of, let's say, genius, but like it's weird. Like, this is what my days are like right now, and I'm just showing you a piece or two. If you saw my desk, you would really think I needed to hire an assistant, because I'm out of my element here. But I can pick up every single piece of paper and make complete sense of it with just a sentence or a fragment of a sentence, and remember a conversation I had with Seth. If I were to take each of these slips of paper that are everywhere here, I could write a book or channel a book on every single slip of paper. This would be one book. So one of the things that is a little bit challenging with Seth is that it's an overload of information. He is endless. He is a bottomless well. So what happens in our connection with them is that a soul like Seth, the others come and they take the edge off that, or they help to, process things in bite-sized pieces. So I can use the information that I'm getting like mad from Seth, and she can show a little bit more of a simpler way to apply it, a way that we can manifest direction for the reconstruction period of 2020 and beyond. And I know I have this written somewhere from Seth, so I wonder if I can find it. Oh, there it is. Yeah. Okay. So, okay. This is a theme of Ein's in her body of work, and there's no doubt about it. And the other day I was sitting here, I probably had about, 7 minutes before my next session. And all of a sudden Seth came in and he started to go on and on and on and on about self-reliance. And within 3 or 4 minutes, I honestly, again, my breath was taken away. If there was a way I could get it out of here and put it on a piece of paper fast, I would have had a phenomenal book just from that 3 minutes of conversation with him. But what he was helping us to understand is that part of the ignition process in reconstruction, and now we can certainly see why Ein is such an important and integral part of reconstruction, is that self-reliance is one of the key elements in moving forward. One of the challenges that we've experienced in modern history is, even though we have begun to understand from the advent of modern psychology the consequence of childhood on our ability to love ourselves and others, and to be at peace and to be happy and to be whole, there has been a lot of energy that is veered toward spending unnecessary energy and time and focus in the analysis of our past trauma and our past experiences. So if we, for example, if we experienced 15 years of trauma when we were little, and then we spend 60 years after that trying to unravel it and trying to become whole, what have we done? We have duplicated that 15 years 4 times in the analysis of that 15 years, right? And by the time you're all done with that, you're 75 damn years old. Like, why? Why would we do that? So what the guides are helping us to understand is that within everything that we bring through, even the kernel of a good idea, we tend to, on this planet, get so enamored by a good idea that we push it to an extreme. And when we push it to an extreme, it no longer has balance, and it no longer has an overall body of benefit to us. And that includes analysis of the connection between our past and our present. Because if we stay heavy in the analysis of what the consequences of our life were, or the consequences of history or world history on today's politics or environment, then we're not able to move forward. And one of the ways that we can process information more quickly is to learn self-reliance. Self-reliance is something that we're all born with. When we become dependent on others, it is because of the introduction of other people's energies, not because we are incompetent. It's because other people will do things for us and we will become dependent on them doing it for us. Okay? So at the head of, if we're building and we're reconstructing, and as we reconstruct, it's really important to put foundational blocks down so that our structure can grow bigger and stronger and have the longevity of a pyramid in Egypt or anywhere for that matter. The first foundational block is going to be self-reliance. Now, I would think, I'm listening to you guides, but I would think that the first foundational block would be love. So why are you skipping over love and giving me self-reliance? Their answer to that question, thank you for asking it, everybody, but the answer to that question is, this is love. Every bit in here is a piece of love. That's a pretty good answer. I accept your answer. Yes, I accept that. That makes a lot of sense. So what we're doing when we're looking at the foundation is we're taking pieces of the vibration of love and we're using more exact interpretations of the vibrations that comprise love in meaningful ways where we can actually use it to our benefit, and we can have a specific example of what to work for or what to strive to help others work for. Okay? You can think of any situation, and I'm happy to see you guys put a quick sentence in there or two, because it'll be fun to even read there. But you can think of almost any circumstance between one or more humans where if one human steps in and gives a little more than is necessary, it can disable a person instead of able them. Okay? I know we use the word enable. That never made any sense to me. How are you enabling someone if you're actually disabling them, right? Enable is a weird word to me. So, but what we're really doing is disabling them. We're making them less able when we're giving them things and doing things for them that they are capable of doing themselves. If we were to take what they're capable of doing for themselves by either intuition or viewing their current level of autonomy, and we were to bring it down 5% and give them 5% less than what they're capable of doing for themselves, they are going to fill the gap and they're going to move up the 5%. That's really fascinating. I got to tell you, this class is fun because I get so much new material and I don't know what's coming. All right, so let's look at that. If someone is capable of giving this much, right? I'm going to make that smaller so you guys can see it better. But if someone is capable of contributing this much to their own well-being or their own process of whatever they're working on in their journey, if this is what they're capable of, and we give them that, got to make it smaller again. I didn't see where they were going with that. If they're capable of doing this, and we give them this much, how much do they have to contribute? The answer is 0. Because not only have we given them all of that, but we've given them this too. They don't have to contribute anything. Okay? However, if someone is capable of contributing this, and we give them this, if they're going to succeed at whatever goal it is that they set for themselves, they have to contribute to get there. And in order to make an individual contribution to the goal, they have to be present and engaged. So they couldn't even accept this when you were giving this because it was all given to them. They didn't have to be engaged in receiving that. I noticed early on when I was learning what it meant to be psychic, and that was such a foreign concept to me, and it was really freaky to me. So in the beginning, when I was getting all this information and I was sorting it all out, and I didn't like the word psychic, and I didn't know what it meant, and I didn't know how it happened to me, and I was just trying to make so much sense out of this. I would give some sessions for free in the beginning, And then I would try to experiment, and I would, ask for a little bit of money from some other people, because this was all such a big, I didn't know what was going on. And I would witness within weeks or months that anytime I gave a session for free, the people didn't do a damn thing with it. Nothing. They did nothing with it. And the reason was they didn't make a contribution. They were not energetically engaged in the process. So they made no gain because they had no loss. They made no contribution to be there. They didn't give up any effort whatsoever. So it might not necessarily always be money that's the contribution, but if somebody doesn't contribute something of value to them, to the process of someone trying to assist them, then they cannot attain any value from the process of giving the help. Right? It's interesting. So what we want to think about is, in order to ignite self-reliance, we want to dial down what we can contribute. So we want to contribute more of maybe asking a question, or maybe giving, help or gifts or money or advice in ways where we're giving pieces of it, or delivering it in ways that create another question or another bit of curiosity, right? When I was done channeling the answers, I didn't have a title either, the same way I didn't have a title for her book. And then I I know what happened. I got a vision of, I walked out onto my front porch, and there was a box of books. And I was like, oh, this is so cool. So I went over on that step and I opened up the box of books, and there was the channel book with the title on it, The Answers to Your Questions About Life. So I got the answer by channeling it too, just the same way that I did, but she channeled it through her husband that channeled it. And so where was I when I picked the book up off? I'm still looking at the book on the porch. Where was I? Anyone? Unmute yourself. No one, huh? No one was with me? Okay, we'll bring it back. Okay, so
You contribute to give and to receive.
Okay, yes. So if there's no engagement in the process, that person will not be present. They might have a fun hour with you, or they might be able to take your money and spend it. They might even spend it to where you directed it, or they may be able to call that professor, or go down a motor vehicle, or they may be able to call your uncle, or they may be able to go on that job interview, or they may even read that book. But if they're not, they won't read the book, but they'll perhaps purchase the book. But if they're not engaged in the process because you've done it for them, then they're not going to take in the vibration of what it is you have shown them. Okay? And I'll show you how this works. Just watch this for a second. So most people know how, I don't really love technology. So I do what I have to do because I live on the earth in 2020. I don't do it well, as you can see by the green screen earlier, but I do my best to keep up. So like long after the dinosaurs were dead, I was still using a flip phone. And so everyone tried to get me to stop I was using T9 and a flip phone, right? So it was starting to get to the point where they were doing interventions. Like, this is a serious issue. You've got to upgrade. So at an intervention, I had 2 family members. They made an appointment with an iPhone tech guy, and I was going to get instructions on an iPhone for 1 hour, one-on-one instruction, and I was going to leave with their pre-purchased iPhone in my bag, okay? So I go to the appointment because they've done an intervention, right? So you gotta be there. I go to the appointment, and he starts to talk, and he starts to talk, and he starts to talk. And I'm like, I'm really sorry. I don't really understand what you're saying, and I'm embarrassed, but I'm going to cancel this appointment, and I'm leaving. And I ran out of there with my flip phone, and I got nothing out of it. And then on the way home, I tried to think of a lie that I could say about why the appointment didn't happen. Okay? So I got nothing out of it. Then months later, I was doing something and my son's like, Mom, just freaking get an iPhone. And I'm like, I can't, I don't have the mental capacity for it. I don't understand it. I've tried. I went on that appointment. It didn't work. And he's like, oh. He picks up his iPhone. He's like, look, blah, 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 blah. And I watched him and I'm like, oh, wow, that was a lot easier than T9. And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, all right, I can do that. I was engaged then so I could learn because he gave a delivery package that made me engage, right? So you've got to get people engaged. And to get them engaged means you can't overgive. You cannot overgive. I never would have gotten past T9 if the delivery system hadn't gotten me engaged. If you do things for other people excessively, they will not engage. Right? Right. Okay, so a great example would be that there's this beautiful foundation that was building. Let's go back about 10 years because I don't want to talk in the modern about this, but a company had, an organization had raised a lot of money to build accessible housing for returned vets. And it was a beautiful thing because the only thing the vet had to do was move him or herself in with their family and everything else was taken up. This house was completely finished. But here's the challenge. It was a beautiful, beautiful process. It was beautiful the way they raised money. It was beautiful how many people volunteered and how many people put effort into building this house for either a wheelchair or for impaired mobility or sight or hands or anything. But when the people moved in, they couldn't keep up with the house. So it deteriorated or it wasn't maintained or it fell apart or the property taxes weren't paid. Is it because they were inadequate? No, it was because they weren't engaged in the process of the building of the home. They were just brought there one day and said, surprise, here's the key. So they were in this house and they had this fantastic moment and they got to ride on the wave of love and support. But the ride on the wave of love and support does not replace the ignition of self-reliance, does it? That will fade, but self-reliance is perpetual because when you get stuck, you figure out another way. When you get stuck, you figure out another way. So this is the cornerstone of our new building in reconstructing. So whenever we get excited about what we can do to help construct a better world than we were born into or that we see around us, think in terms of how can we ignite people, not how can we give to people. How can we ignite people, not how can we give. Okay? One of the things that I really love witnessing, and I've witnessed it for a long time with quite a few clients, is I have a number of Black clients who are very big and instrumental in some mega churches in the Black communities that have amazing speakers and events come in, plus personal training for people under the age of 35 to teach financial literacy and to teach wealth building. And when I see the number of young people that are educated and touched in the Black communities, I mean, there are hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people. I am excited and I am exhilarated because instead of saying, let me give you money, they're saying, let me teach you how to catch up. Let me teach you how to do this. You might be able to get some value in the benefits as we're reimagining the brutal history that we've put you through. So please, yes, enjoy anything that might come your way, but also enter into it as a partner by saying, I can be self-reliant as well, and I can make a contribution by being literate in my own wealth building, right? It's incredible. It's just a different way of thinking about things. And so that's what you want to think about, is how can I engage? I have a client who, a team, husband and wife, and out of Philly, they developed I don't know the details. I probably shouldn't even bother to try to do the science of it, but just an amazing delivery system for a very simple and inexpensive vaccination that could save potentially millions and millions of children in African countries. Okay. Now, what I loved about it was they could have just gone and flown there and brought all the vaccinations and just had long lines of people, village after village after village, and vaccinated everybody. But that's not what they did. What they did instead was they would go down and they would find people who could vaccinate the people in their own village. And they would train them and they would educate them and they would teach them. Because as more children are born, what are we going to do? You're going to be reliant on us to fly back when this kid is 6? Well, now that kid's 7 and that one's 2 and that one's 3 months. When's the perfect moment for us to come back? Well, I don't know what's going to happen in my life. I don't know what's going to happen in this foundation's life, right? Let's figure out how you guys can get this done without us. And that's the idea. So in every village that they went to, not only did they help with the inoculations, but they left people who were trained and capable of doing it themselves. You follow? So if you're training and then those people are giving vaccinations for the life of all of their village members and training someone else to do it, already you're on to another village. That's another 1,000 people that you could help in a day because you didn't stand there and give 1,000 extra vaccinations, right? So self-reliance, always give power back to whomever you are guiding to assist. Let me catch up on the chat room. Contributing to you. Yes, absolutely. Yes, I like that too, Sue. To engage them. This happens intuitively with each different person. Know what they like and ask questions to lead them to it. Yes, that's absolutely beautiful. I got that, and you must have channeled it at the same time. But one of the ideas was to let go of feeling the need to have an agenda about how you can best be able to have people be engaged, right? It might not be you that is the decider of how to get somebody engaged in a process. It could be that you are feeling inspired or a good idea pops up for you. Did you ever see a situation where someone is explaining something and everybody's eyes are glazed over, and then all of a sudden that person who's doing all the explaining and said, well, think about it like this, and then all of a sudden they're writing on a board and they're doing this, or they're doing this with that one person, and all of a sudden everybody's like, yeah, well, that makes sense. So what happened in that moment of inspiration where they decided to relay this point in a different way was they got intuition. They were channeling. They were auto speaking. They were auto everything. They were connecting with this body of souls that are helping us. And that body of souls that is helping us is grand, massive, unlimited, and never ending. Okay, so self-reliance. There was another note that, okay, I'm going to tell you the rest of the notes that from that 3-minute conversation I had with Seth. And like I said, there's a book in there, but here's the 3 notes I jotted down from it. So he was discussing self-reliance. And what self-reliance ultimately leads to, self-reliance leads to a marker that doesn't want to work right now. Self-reliance is the precursor for self-ignition. it's not just about being dependent on yourself, because that doesn't sound very magical. It almost sounds, it could sound kind of lonely. Like you don't have to be a one-man island or a one-person island. But what it leads to is self-ignition. It leads to a sense of trust in oneself, that when faced with other situations that are lacking in familiarity or experience, that they will be able to sort out with ingenuity, with creativity, with resourcefulness, with asking, but they'll be able to sort out the next moment of doubt. They'll be able to sort out the next moment of hesitation. They'll be able to sort out the next moment of disempowerment. One of the reasons why we have such rigid camps in the political front in not only in the United States, but it is sort of a worldwide epidemic at the moment. But one of the reasons is that without the ignition of self-reliance, we pass our power on to what we believe is the outside source that will sort out the things that we believe we need or are necessary. And if we think they're necessary outside of us, then we will feel threatened if we don't have faith that they will perpetuate. So the battle between the political parties is because when people examine the force-fed, very small and narrow descriptions from the media of what each party represents, they're also being force-fed the perceived threat that the other party is eliminating in their life or creating chaotically around them. When they take in the idea of a perceived threat and associate it with the opposing party, then they become very, very scared because they don't have a sense of self-empowerment. They don't have a self-ignition, okay? They don't have a sense of how to work through whatever their imaginary fear of loss is if the other party were to be in power. Of course, they're not necessarily thinking it through in those terms, but where the core is being hit them, why there's so much anger and abrasion connected with the political party perceived differences right now, is because self-ignition is not existing among those people, okay? And what does self-ignition lead to? It leads to being able to answer this question. How powerful am I? Okay, how powerful am I? The operative word here is I. How powerful am I? If we take that sentence and we're not looking toward a political party, it's saying I am powerful. Actually, politics is really in the backdrop of my life. It's not in the forefront of my life. There's very little political movement that actually affects our day-to-day experiences. It's actually happening more now simply because of what you focus on will expand. And when you think there'll be a consequence, you will find a consequence and the consequence will arise. Everyone understand? But in general, what happens in that movement has very little personal consequence to us whatsoever. So what instead, if we turned off the TV and turned off the news of any news source, and we said instead, how powerful am I? Not with wanting to leave the answer on a sloping note, but to leave the answer on a high note. How powerful am I? Look how powerful I am. Look how powerful I am. I've never been much of a phone person, and there's a funny little story about why I don't like the phone. Well, oh, look at that! It shows out in my my T9 iPhone and my flip phones. I don't love phones, and there's this little tiny traumatic story from childhood as to why I don't like phones. But anyway, I know the cause. I'm not going to overanalyze it. I'm not going to therapy. I just don't like phones. But when I was in my 20s and had to figure out how to get a life going with no one to help me or guide me or answer questions, every now and then I would get an idea. We'll go to the Yellow Pages and look this up and call that person. And because I hated phones, I was afraid of making the phone call more than I was afraid of taking the action. If I could have had someone make the phone call for me, it would have been a piece of cake. But making the damn phone call was huge. I would make that phone call and then I would hang up and have the result. And I would feel so powerful, right? Oh my God, I felt so powerful. This goofy little 20-something-year-old with no idea what life is about. I called one person and I felt powerful because I made the phone call. Now, what if someone had come in and made that phone call for me? Would that have helped me? No, because I wouldn't have gotten that feeling of power. I would not have been self-reliant. I would not have self-ignited. I would not have been able to answer the question, how powerful am I? How powerful am I? I am powerful. Now I'm at a place in my life where I hire someone, they come to my house, they dial every phone call, and then they bring me the phone and they say, I have the person on the phone for you, ma'am. Would you like it? I say, you call me ma'am one more time, you're fired. Call me miss. I like that better. It makes me sound young and youthful. However, thank you for dialing the phone for me. But back then, I couldn't do that. It's funny, I'll get someone on the phone and I'll say, the hardest part of my day was getting you on the phone. But that's really interesting. Obviously, it's very, very clear that the foundational building blocks, we're not going to be able to completely go through all of them today. And I know that we'll stay engaged with each other. I haven't had any information whatsoever that the guys are saying, let's do part 3. I just don't see that coming up. It'll probably maybe come up at some point. But that doesn't mean that we don't have other ways to engage. It doesn't mean that we don't have other ways to be connected in community. But in the meantime, let's continue along with whatever it is that Seth and Ayn are communicating with us. What is really interesting when you look at these 3 words is you can really get a feel and sense of how Seth and Ayn's energy are just completely immersed in this, right? You can feel them popping out of that series of words. So we nailed it. We got one foundational block down. And I can see now as we're communicating that I think the guys are going to give us another block, and I have no idea what it'll be. I didn't even know we were going to make blocks, but it's clear that the guys understand that reconstruction is a process. So they're not going to give us the entire reconstruction process today because it doesn't make sense. We're not going to be able to keep up with it. But what we are going to do is we're going to start to say, how can I implement the ignition of self-reliance in others around me for the things that it is that I want to contribute, whether it's to my neighbor, my daughter, my students, my mother, my boss. How can I ignite self-reliance in a way that the contribution that I am making is self-perpetuating? How can I contribute the ignition of self-reliance so that the contribution that I'm making is self-perpetuating? That's the question that we want to ask ourselves as we're making any contribution to any one person. And through this narrative this evening, one of the things I've been glancing at myself is I have never had an issue communicating with clients that the one area where I stayed connected to intuition was in raising children. So it doesn't mean I'm great. It doesn't mean I'm super. It doesn't mean I'm special in any way. But what I do know is that I stayed connected to intuition in raising children. So naturally, I raised children who are confident, who are self-reliant, and most important to me, I'm raising children who are really, really happy, okay? And they go out there and they're uncommon among the peer set because they are very able. They are very able beings, okay? Happy, able beings. And what I'm recognizing tonight as I'm listening to Seth and Ein Moore is that where intuition showed itself a lot in my parenting of them is that I helped them to answer this question. Each of my children on their own and independently and in different ways from each other, they understand themselves as really powerful beings. And I don't think that that's very common among their peers, okay? So my kids range from 18 to 29. And I don't see that that's a common statement for 18 to 29-year-olds right now, that the children, they're not children, that the younger adults understand how powerful they are, right? If I call those people children, then that person who dials my phone for me has the right to call me ma'am. I thought that was funny. Okay, so let's see what else they have to say. Before we do that, do you remember at the end last time, obviously we all remember, when JFK Jr. came in, and that was a surprise. And it was the biggest surprise to me because I hadn't communicated with him but once. And that once I never communicated with him again. So it was a big surprise to me. And the bigger surprise to me was that he wasn't a participant in delivering the body of work that went into the answers. So there was really no earthly explanation for why he would come in. He certainly gave his explanation for why he came in, which I thought was fabulous. But I'm having the same exact experience right now. And so I guess instead of at this minute giving us the second block, we're going to get another guest author come in, or guest speaker. And once again, to the best of my knowledge, this particular soul had not been a part of the group of souls that had given me the answers. Okay. And it's so funny to show you how like ignorant I am. I know when someone's going to type it into the chat room within 10 seconds, because I don't know this guy's real last earthly name. However, this is the soul that is coming, that is in with us right now. So someone quickly type it. What was his earthly name? I don't have a clue. I've never, ever, ever, ever communicated with him, and I haven't pursued it. I've never pursued communicating with a soul. It's just not what I do. I just don't do that. I like when they come to me. Oh, we're getting it. We got the first name, right? Okay, it's coming. It's coming. Theodore. Oh, is that his like name? Like, was his last name Seuss? Oh, no, clearly not. I don't know how to pronounce that, but thank you. Wow. I wouldn't have matched that up in a lineup if someone had given me a couple of names. I would have not matched that up to Dr. Seuss. All right, so here's him in as our guest, and his contribution to the foundation. Oh, this is interesting. I like it. So his contribution, I didn't realize even when he came in that he was going to contribute to a block. I thought he was just going to come in to get us all jazzed and pump us up, or to show off. I didn't realize he was going to actually like do something here. But clearly, this is what he wants. He wants to give us block 2. So we're on block 2, and I'm trying to find a marker that works like a little bit better right now. And of course, once again, and I'll say this all the time, I'm saying Geisel. Oh, thank you. That is so nice of you to write out the way to say it. Theodore Geisel. Theodore Geisel. I love that. Nice. Nice. Oh, I'm so happy, Teresa, that you love him. Okay, so here's what he's contributing. I'm going to give you the word. And that's, I think, the easiest way to begin, because you are all enlightened, intuitive, intelligent beings. So no matter how much I say about it afterward, trust your first hit when I give it to you. That's fun. I didn't see that coming at all. I really didn't see that coming at all. But that's fun because I know all the stuff I'm downloading on that. Interestingly, number one, the only pre-topic in the relationship workshops that we're going to be doing, the only pre-topic I've been given so far is communications, which is really interesting that that is now coming in as block 2 in the foundation of reconstructing the world in the way that we would like to, to make the world in which we would like to live. But one of the things that he's indicating is communications it's a really broad topic. And it has so many different levels and so many different layers, from the differences in languages around the globe, the difference between intonation, the difference between body language, the difference between the spoken word and the written word, the difference between sign language and being able to hear language, the difference between interpretations of material that had previously been on the earth when people are taking archaic languages and trying to bring it into the modern century. So there's lots of levels of communication just simply with using language to connect. But what's fascinating is there's another layer of communication that's very active on our globe right now, and we've kind of alluded to it earlier in the session, is the way that we receive our communications, whether it's through the news, through the internet, through social media, through instant messaging, through having a device and communicating quickly and efficiently through a device and instantaneously. So communications also has to do with the method of transmission. So it's not only what are we transmitting, but what are our methods of transmitting. In today's world, we have people that they transmit their communications through YouTube videos, through memes, through humor, there are still newspapers out there, through newspapers and magazines, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, telephones. There are so many ways to transmit communications. And that is a very, very important level of layers when we're considering the communication block. How do we best establish a harmonious relationship with communications to be able to effectively speak to others about whatever it is we are building or doing or working toward, or what our goal set or what our personal desires are, even if it's a one-on-one conversation. I think that as I'm looking back on today's session, I realized that the guides didn't necessarily come right out and say, what is this, right? We've talked about deconstructing and we've talked about constructing, reconstructing, and they're clearly indicating that we're part of the reconstructing process. At the higher levels of awareness people, the more active they are in reconstructing, the better, the better, stronger, more secure the building will be. So as they're showing us the building blocks of the reconstruction, they're showing us what shores up something so that we can build a sturdy, enduring building that will last thousands of years. But what I don't think they made clear in the beginning is that this is not about you guys having to go out and save the world. This is, again, it's like turning to your neighbor and reconstructing your relationship with that neighbor, or your communication with that neighbor, or your interaction with that neighbor. So it's not about having to be in front of 1,000 people or 1,000,000 people, or get on a plane to give vaccinations to children in African nations. It's about you make that decision about where your influence is and where you might be of value to influence in a positive way. So whether you are seeing yourself have the capability of influencing one person or 1,000,000 people, the foundation is exactly the same for 1 or 300 million or whatever number you want to grab at. But whatever your scope of influence is, or you would like it to be, or what you aim for, the foundation will be exactly the same for one person to an infinite number of people, okay? So now when we get back to the idea of communications, there are a lot of layers. I'll give you an example of like what is the method of delivery. When I'm coaching people and they are in the hiring process, and I'm probably some of you have gone through this with me, business owners or people who are working in human resources or department heads, a lot of times I'll coach them through the process because number one, I can bring intuition to the table, but there are a lot of, again, ignitions of self-reliance that when the clients have it under their belt, they're able to make better value out of those experiences for them and for others in the future. But one of the things we always talk about is when you have an applicant or candidates and you're narrowing it down, is you want to develop methods in which the candidates that you are communicating with communicate with you in at least 3 different forms, okay? So listen to this. So, and this happens every time. And like I said, there's probably someone online with us today that has had this opportunity to listen to guides talk about this. So don't talk to a candidate and then hire them when you've only spoken to them on the phone. Don't hire a candidate when you've spoken to them and you've only worked back and forth through email. Don't hire a candidate when the only form of communication has been through Skype. Don't hire a candidate when the only form of communication you've ever had is an in-person meeting or multiple in-person meetings. And the reason is everybody's ease in communicating is different through different methods. So in order to help a person communicate what they can contribute to the team or the goal, it's important to give them multiple opportunities to demonstrate their best self. Whereas someone might feel intimidated and nervous and introverted during an in-person interview, that same person might be a phenomenal interviewer by answering some questions in writing through email, okay? Another person might feel they are embarrassed by their communication skill, but they still know themselves in writing, but they still know themselves to be an excellent communicator and to be intelligent, and they're proud of their intelligence. So that might be a person where having a Skype interview would be a really good thing instead of having a written interview. The idea is that it doesn't have to be massive experiences with the candidate in all 3 methods, but give each person an opportunity to connect with you in a meaningful way through 3 different techniques. Does that make sense? So if I'm listening to this while I am just coaching people and interviewing potential employees, you could see how deep the idea of communications as a foundation for the reconstruction period really is. That's just one tiny, tiny little aspect. It just hit me that we're at 8:32 and I don't know where the time went. And there's no one more disappointed than, hold on, wait for it. There's no one more disappointed than, hold on. I have such a bad memory for names. Theodore Geisel, because he would love to chat with us a lot longer than this. And now as we're exiting, I really, really, really feel like we got to get back together again kind of soon, because we just kind of scratched the surface on the second block of foundation for reconstruction. But they're not abandoning you just because we're going to wrap it up tonight. They're with you. They're always with you. They're there to communicate with you. They're there to ignite you. They're there for you to understand how powerful and wonderful and lovely you are. They're there to reinforce that you are powerful, okay? And you and I will, I promise, reconnect in meaningful ways that we can cherish. And somehow, some way, and I don't know how at this moment, maybe you can send me an email of suggestions, somehow, some way over the next, I don't know, months, years, I have no idea, we'll continue to build this foundation. But I do believe they gave us enough information about 2 fundamental blocks that we have the power to utilize this information for an indefinite amount of time without feeling a lack or a loss of not yet knowing what the other 4 blocks are. Yes? Yes. All right. Thank you, everybody. If anyone wants to send me a communication where I can share it with the group after the fact, just because this evening's class is over, it doesn't mean that I wouldn't still send those emails out of shared experiences. Even if it's just one little anecdote or whatever, I'm still happy to continue to share. I hope to see you in the relationship class and at the Enlightenment Power Group. I think it's on the second Monday of this month, also live on Zoom. And I know that, oh, and thank you, someone just wrote in, oh, look at that. She wrote in all of the classes that I was trying to remember. Yes, I'm doing another live event in Hampton Bays on September 26th. Thank you so much for reminding me. The event that we did on July 11th in person was such a huge success, and it was so much fun that we have selected a new topic, and we were going to be able to experience that kind of an event a day. Thank you for remembering, because I clearly wasn't doing a great job. Again, thank you for being here, everybody. Stay connected to your guides. Trust that they're with you. No judgment, no doubt. Just please have fun with it and stay in touch. Good night, everybody.